a recognised and awarded entrepreneur with an incredible ability to drive a brand. From the not-so-subtle lobbying of some of Australia's major corporations by way of flying helicopters with banners around their corporate headquarters, to your recognised and awarded disruptive marketing campaigns, your impromptu interview with Barack Obama, your TED Talks, you're a philanthropic and social enterprise powerhouse. In 2014, you were named and honoured in JCI's 10 Outstanding Young People of the World.
Big title, wasn't it?
It's a big title. 2015, you won EY Entrepreneur of the Year for the Southern Region. 2016, you were named in the Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 for social entrepreneurship. You're on an incredible journey. You're the co-founder and managing director of one of Australia's most successful startups. Thankyou. Thank you, and welcome to the Hidden Philanthropist, Daniel Flynn.
Great to be here.
Thank you for being here, mate. Like I said, you're on an incredible journey. I've seen some of your talks before. You talk really well. Congratulations on what you do. I've actually heard you talk in the past in some of your discussions about vision and mission. You probably don't want to go down the path of vision and mission, but today, you know what? I think that's perfect to break today's podcast down into vision and mission, and that being, firstly, we're thankful for you giving us the opportunity to learn about you, but I guess the vision being you, Daniel Flynn, the visionary, to learn about your incredible care and empathy, to learn about your innate kindness and compassion, and your early day journey. So the visionary, Daniel Flynn, where did it start for you, buddy? What did life for young Daniel look like?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this journey at Thankyou has a very clear, at 19 it started, but yeah, I look at my whole story and yeah, it's an interesting journey. I was the kid at school selling anything I could. The kid running around selling, gobstoppers, or apparently I got in trouble in kindergarten for trying to sell the leaves to other kids, and I couldn't understand why they didn't want to pay for it. So I had this interesting lean towards business entrepreneurship, and then I grew up in a family that had incredible perspective on the world. We learned from a young age about extreme poverty, and yeah, I feel like my parents did a great job for myself and my sisters, having us aware of more than just us as a family or as an individual.
So a lot of these qualities came through, because one of the questions later is, do you now have a mentor? I guess in your early days, those formation years, it was your parents that guided you into this.
Yeah, huge impact. And very grateful to have, two amazing parents, and I know everyone's story can be different, but mum and dad did set a great foundation. They set some pretty strong boundaries, it was pretty strict at home. But I was always the one, pushing boundaries as well. So I think they figured that out with me, and a lot of what we do in Thankyou is, it's about pushing, boundaries, certainly not breaking, rules, but it is about breaking convention to try and, reimagine a better world.
To achieve what you've achieved, you're obviously, you're clearly a leader. Would you have said because you talked about this delineation or this sort of moment in time when you were 19, when this journey of Thankyou started, were you a leader before that? You talked about in school selling things and this entrepreneurship. Were you a leader?
It's a good question, because I think, if you interviewed friends at school and asked them this question, I'd be fascinated to know what they say. I imagine it would probably be no. I wasn't leading anything as such, but I'd get excited about things and get others maybe interested in them or looking into it. We had there was a time, I think we were 14 or 15, and I told some friends about fruit picking up in regional Australia and kind of led a trip at 15 on some trains. We went out into the country and then a bus. We went fruit picking and we got majorly ripped off by the owners, and it was a disaster. But there's an example of leading some people in a direction, but it wasn't really until that sort of 18, 19 that I think purpose of leading people somewhere begins to merge and becomes a different story.
So some of your biggest influences you've mentioned were your parents.
Yeah.
You finished school, you've got these qualities that are, firstly, you've got natural qualities that have shone through in your philanthropic work, but I mean, this work ethic, this drive, this aggression to achieve what you want to achieve. Which school did you go to? Were you down here in Melbourne?
Yeah, I was. So I went to Unveils Christian College, Blackburn Primary School for primary. Yeah. Yeah,
and were you good at school in terms of?
So good at school. I mean, you know, I was good at school when I applied myself at school. I had a pretty good relationship with the principal because I'd have a few catch-ups from time to time just to, I think I was always sort of pushing boundaries, maybe never doing anything very bad, but a bit disruptive. Apparently I told Mum at school I felt my goal was to make sure the other students enjoyed their time at school. And she's like, that is not your job. You are there to learn. She was a teacher as well. So, I think in year 12, that was the moment for me of like, wow, you only get one shot. I haven't focused on my studies enough. And so I actually disappeared for about a year into the library at lunchtime and after school. And I really applied myself, and I got the grades or the numbers that I needed to get into the course I wanted to get into.
Further education, what did that look like?
So I had locked onto this idea of property development. And
glad you didn't go down that path.
Wow. Yeah, you're living the dream. I mean, I had a mentor who my dad helped him out at law school, and then he went on to be a property developer. And I think that was a huge influence because he said, hey, I'd love to mentor you. I didn't really fully understand what that meant, but he gave me some books. I went to a meeting or two with him. His work in property blew my mind. And the more books I read, by the age of 18, I was convinced I want to be a property developer in luxury homes and then, skyscrapers, build big. And fascinated by that. And so I was studying construction management. That was the goal. RMIT, project and construction management. I wanted to know that process really well. Also, I thought, turned up to my first lecture on concrete, and the lecturer said, welcome to the semester of concrete. And I thought that was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. So we had 2 semesters on concrete, and I was like, I have picked the wrong course. My mind can't concentrate for that long.
Did you finish?
No.
Okay.
No. So I got 3 years for a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so throughout, I would imagine you finished high school, and before we move on, one other thing, was there anything else that had an influence? Like your level of empathy is incredible. And a lot of that comes from the teachings of your parents and the home environment.
Yeah.
Was there any outside influences? Did faith play a role in it? What else is? Because what you do is pretty special, but to be able to do that and execute it, it takes a real level of, like I said, that innate kindness. Because I guess with the drive is one thing, but you to have such a level of empathy is another. Was there faith in?
Yeah. So. Okay, if you met me at 18 and then at 19, same person, but, dramatically different in the things I'm talking about, because me pre-18, it was about entrepreneurship, and it was about, success and money and giving. Like, it's good to be generous, and I suppose that would lead to that. But I was very much locked onto the business entrepreneurship phase. And then I have a series of moments which came from some pretty deep personal questions. I went on my own faith journey. Why are we here? How does it work? Is there a God? Some big questions. And on my own faith journey, I started to get a sense of, faith is real for me. And then also this big question that maybe we all have. What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I made? Why was I born? And I find myself at 19 getting a window into maybe the answer or some of that answer. And this for me was really remarkable because it's not like the entrepreneurship and the money side dropped. It's just that this new perspective entered. And it was like, it wasn't that money would one day lead to helping. It was that they were intrinsically linked and they could be from now. And what would that look like? What would it look like to build, from day one, so to speak, the generosity and the impact to the entrepreneurship. There was a few moments for me, one in front of a computer. People have heard me talk about it before, but it's a moment where it's like I'm sitting there crying, watching stories of kids who don't have access to clean water. Now, why was I crying? It was moving, but I also put that down to faith. Like, I don't at 19, I'm not crying a lot over a lot of videos, but something happened. I was meant to see that. I was meant to think.
Had you travelled in your young
Nope.
years with your parents?
Nope.
So you'd never witnessed this firsthand?
No.
This was sitting at a computer watching it, and it hit you that hard?
It hit me so hard. And it hit me hard because I was also deep down asking some pretty big life questions around purpose, around faith, around... And so the convergence of these three things, that moment, and there's many that follow it, but it moved me. And it's sort of the best way I could describe it is that particular day, it's like I couldn't unsee what I saw. I couldn't get back to the dreams of building skyscrapers or luxury homes and design. I couldn't get back to that without thinking about, but we still in our world have 4,500 children dying every day from waterborne disease. We still have, at the time, 900 million people that didn't have clean water. And I remember doing some maths. I was actually down at Docklands here in Melbourne. I was looking up at some towers that I liked from a design perspective. And I remember just doing like a rough calculation. There was a stat I read that it cost $20 to give someone access to clean water. Now, that stat's being debated, but even if you just took that at what's presented, $20 to give someone clean water, I added up, a $1.4 million apartment divided by $20 times by the number of apartments in that building. And all of a sudden this feeling of like, wow, our world is so advanced and we're building great things, but we've got this injustice. And it's like we've also got the money here. How do we converge them? So I think the empathy grew more and more, traveling to the field and meeting people whose lives have been impacted by this work. That just changed me at a whole nother level again and again and again. But here at 19 is this wrestle of vision and mission and maybe this uneasy feeling of like, this cannot stay the same as it is today.
You mentioned vision and mission, and I love that because I guess the mission really is, the execution, the team, the building of the brand, the delivery, the ability, the ability to be able to deliver on your vision.
Yeah.
So 19, you've had this moment in time where all these things have come together: your entrepreneurship, your drive, your generosity, your empathy, and now all of a sudden you've got a direction where you're going to take that energy and focus that energy. You had that moment. Was it also in that moment that it came to you that your path was going to be one of philanthropy and actioning this, or did that just trigger something inside you that you started to explore? And
look, I don't talk a lot about this but this is the perfect environment to talk about it. My biggest issue with the Thankyou idea at 19, my biggest issue with the concept, I loved the concept. All the profit could go. It would be all for the mission. My biggest issue with it was like, but what about me? Like, should it be more 50-50? 50% of the profit? Or what about 90-10? Like 90% could go in like 10%. Because for most people who build a business or an organization, there's a percentage that is yours. And so my biggest issue or challenge with the idea was confronting all of the perspectives I had on the way things have been done before and the traditional path, which, people I'd mixed with, and, you make your money, then you give it. And you might give some along the way, but it's a different way of making it and giving it all at the same time. In fact, the making it is for the giving, and it is so embedded, to the point now some people like to, does it ever get hard in terms of knowing like the right amounts to give, and how do you feel as an entrepreneur? And it's like, well, actually it's all in the Constitution. Like you can't, that day is like, the money goes up to the charitable trust, and 100% of that goes out to all of our partners. We don't sit back each year going, how much do we keep? How much do we give? It's like, it's for the mission.
Yeah, and when you go down this path of philanthropy, unfortunately, there's no one there that teaches you necessarily right from wrong. That mental battle that you have, how did you know what was the right formula? I mean, when did you realise that, this challenge of creating a life and a journey for yourself, compared to the thirst or the need to help and create a better life for others. I mean, that was always going to come down to how much you wanted to make for yourself compared to how much you gave away. How did you answer that question from within?
I mean, I'm still answering it today, because the wrestle is always there when you look at what's in front of you on like your life goals or family. We've got 2 kids now, and that turns out is more expensive than when you're just married, and there's just 2 of you. Like it adds up. I think what was really cool back then was I couldn't unsee Thankyou either. I couldn't unsee the purity of that idea 100%. And I remember the best way I could describe it is, even though 50-50 and the 50% kind of social enterprise model, which exists today in market and, works. It's a great model. But even at that level, the best way I could describe it is when I pictured this idea of Thankyou at 50-50, there was no peace, which is the best way I could describe when I consider the concept of Thankyou is all for the mission, 100%. It's like a joy and a peace and excitement, and I follow that, and I followed that. And we're here today, and I look at that and I'm like, it felt right. I'm definitely a gut feel, go with your heart, and that was one of those moments. And I think I've always gone, well, we'll figure the rest out later. The personal financial side, that'll figure itself out later, and probably should have started figuring that out earlier. But that's the tension and the balance.
It's really conflicted, and the reason I say that, I'm not endorsing greed or suggesting for a second that you're greedy, but what I am saying is, like, a lot of those inequalities that create the drive and the inner discipline to be able to execute what you've done is also the same values that want more and more and more. And I mean, you've raised a lot of money, we'll get to that, but I mean, you've raised a lot of money, and even if you had gone a 50-50 model, the next question would be, would you have got the consumer buy-in? Maybe, maybe not, who knows. But even if you made half the money that you've made and you kept half of it, I mean, you still made, $4 or $5 million bucks. And if you had have made as much as you've raised over 17, you've made over 17 million bucks now. Like, that's life-changing money to you. But instead, you've managed to maintain the drive, but not reap the benefits from 17 million bucks that you've raised, which is a real credit to you. Well, thank you. But I and you made a comment to this. I do think that the success of Thankyou and where it's at, and that is attributed to the consumer and everyone who's like, oh, okay, if this is all for a mission, I'm in too. I think that's a big percentage. So I want to give credit to a lot of people there. But I do understand what you're talking about, and I do, the other side of the coin is, like, there's a lot of people who've got a lot of money, or even some money, and their biggest question isn't how do I make more money, even though they want to. It's how do I find my purpose? How do I, like, I've got all the things that are success, but I feel empty, or a bit empty, or there's a hole. And so for me, I'm like, well, I don't have a bunch of that other stuff, but I don't feel empty. And is money success, though? I mean, we talk about this, don't we? And we've talked about it on other podcasts. What is success? Is success having a lot of money, or is success having inner peace? Or is success being a good father? Or is success being a good husband? Or is success being a good leader? I mean, you're super successful in a lot of ways. I think success is incorrectly monetized. And that's when, I think a lot of people are unhappy because they're always striving for success or what they think success is because it's monetized. Correct. And particularly in business and entrepreneurship, if we close our eyes and someone says the word success, what's the first thing you picture? It's not a great father. And if it is, then credit to you. It's not, a great marriage. Success in business, particularly these ideas of almost the trappings that come with the money, can be the first things that pop into mind. But the stuff you touched on, that is success. I think to be a great partner, a great father, a great contributor to society locally. Beyond that, these things, this is the stuff that matters most. And I think a lot of people figure it out eventually, but the quicker we can all figure that out. And the challenges in business, actually, the way that we build
is so unsustainable that you can end up getting a lot of the money trapping success at the direct cost of the stuff that matters most, and really what's going to fulfill and fill you.
So I want to wind it back a little bit. We've talked about the visionary. We've learned a little bit about you. You've hit 19. You're watching your computer screen. You're in tears. We've worked out now, I mean, this social enterprise that you're doing is incredible. Can we start at the start? Why water? Why Thankyou? And let's talk about the journey.
Cool. So bottled water in 2008 was a silly product. It shouldn't exist. I love that you're reaching for one right now. I'm reaching for one.
They didn't have Thankyou water.
No, they didn't. No, don't be sorry. We got rid of it, so it's out of the market. I'll take you on the journey. We started here because bottled water. At the time in Australia, we were spending $600 million, globally $50 billion, and I remember looking at that, thinking that is the like epitome of the Thankyou concept, which is you have extreme poverty, 600 million people don't have clean water, then you have bottled water, 50 billion globally. Today it's 350 billion. But the idea was, imagine launching a brand that it challenges people. In fact, it almost holds up a mirror and says, like, what are we all doing? And if we're going to do it, we should at least do it for good. And so that was the Thankyou concept to us, was always this idea of the products we consume could contribute to the world we see. But we thought bottled water was a really controversial but good entry point. Get the concept out there, and once people are like, oh, I get it, I buy a product, I make a difference. We're like, imagine at that point where you could take it.
Fundamental problem at this point, though.
Mm-hmm.
You got no other brand to leverage recognition off.
Mm-hmm.
You got probably no money.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you're entering into your first taste of corporate life. Like, you're really starting off from, you've got this massive dream, but you are absolutely at ground zero. Like,
and that's the hard part of, like, you have a great vision, but when you kick into the mission and they're like, okay, how do we execute it? It's the hard work. And, you know, back then I thought 3 months, 6 months. It soon became 3 years and beyond to get this thing off the ground. But the initial challenges we faced is what every entrepreneur and every startup face, which is you got no brand recognition, maybe in our case, no track record. And people are looking and going, yeah, you got some big ideas, but how are you going to make that happen? And our research showed us, wow, you do need a lot of money. We didn't have that. But we begin, and I love that the early days are Googling how to do something, and then we'd go from Googling, you know, oh, okay, we need a factory, to looking up some factories, to emailing them to ask if we could meet with them. Now, we still do that today. You know, that's how we grow Thankyou. We just sort of research and but in those early days, and then we'd meet with them. And in the first few meetings, we didn't share the vision. We were still learning. We just had this sort of cryptic conversation around, we're launching a big idea in the category and we're looking for the right partners, and we were just trying to learn and gather information. Then we got the confidence to share the vision, and that was interesting because, you know, at the end of the day, people buy into vision, and one factory manager did. He loved it, and he said he'd back it, which was a cool sentence. We didn't know exactly what that meant, but we thanked him, and then the clarity to what does backing us mean. He removed a lot of the hurdles, so a lot of the upfront costs, a lot of the bottle mold costs, and the things that we now invest in. He removed a lot of that, and he was willing to make the product if we could find someone who would buy it and sell it. He was willing to do that at essentially cash flow positive from day one.
Okay, I've picked up a couple of times now you've said like we and us. So you're not on this journey alone.
No.
Who did you start Thankyou with?
So Jarrod, who him and I went to school together from when we were 5 years old, and Justine. So Jarrod, we were best mates. We had just finished school. Justine, we had been dating for a month when this is beginning. And her story is wild. Like, she is, and spoiler alert, we got married, we have kids, we're all in, and it's a beautiful journey. But her story is remarkable because, in a sense, she's the real social entrepreneur. She had traveled to developing countries from the age of 12 and 14. She'd run bake sales. to raise the money to get their clothing drives, and then she went to help out in some projects through her school and a missions organization. And those were her moments where she was like, when I grow up, I want to help this issue of poverty. And her passion as she grew up was business, marketing, HR. So as we're talking about Thankyou, she was like, this is epic, I'm in.
Your now wife, but back then your girlfriend of 1 month, your best mate from high school, you've started Thankyou, you're on the bottled water. You've got a bit of buy-in, but I mean, really nothing yet that's...
No, a lot of passion. There's a couple of other people. Morgan was there in the early days, and a few joined later. But we were just a bunch of friends with a big vision, no idea. But I love that we weren't alone. I certainly love that I wasn't alone, because it got weird, it got hard, it got lonely. It's nice to do it with other people.
And with this guy that sort of gave you a bit of incentive and a bit of hope, really, that you're going to get some traction. Was he the lead that ultimately led you to breaking into the scene, or was that one of your many false?
Yeah, there was a series of them. So initially I'd met with a business mentor, told him the dream. He said, where would you get the money? And in my head I was thinking, that's why we're meeting. Because I assume you tell someone who's wealthy the idea you have and they give you the money. So when he's like, where's the money? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're saying there's no shareholders in this, so where would you get the money from? And I remember leaving thinking, oh, man, if he doesn't see what we see, that's a problem. But we kept moving forward, and I would say that was the key. We kept moving forward. So the factory manager, he liked it, but he was only in if someone was willing to buy it. So we still had to get someone in the market, and we met with a company called NBC. They were the largest in the industry. And the cool thing when we met with them is we were able to say we have a factory. Because they're in if you're in, but we've done some work here. And when that when that distributor ordered, and it was literally in the first meeting, he said he loved the vision, he'll take 50,000 units. We had told him that we came to them first, and we had other meetings, but you get the first look, and he took it, 50,000 on the spot. So I think that moment was like, wow, this got real. And I remember catching up with that first business mentor, and I told him we have a factory, we've got an order. And he literally said, where is your money coming from? And I just said, we don't have any. And that same mentor ended up writing a check for $20,000, $10,000 from his business partner, 10 from him. It was a gift. I love the vision, love how you've just gone and made it happen. And we needed 20. He'd asked, and we needed 20 for registering the company and a whole bunch of other just little things that you have to do, right? That we hadn't done because we didn't have the money.
So you really were...
Yeah. We were in...
Did you deliver on the 50,000?
We delivered on the 50,000. It's a bit of a funny story, but he actually asked in the meeting how long it would take for us to deliver it. And I very optimistically said 3 weeks.
How long did it take?
I don't know, 9, 10. It was a lot longer, but we got there.
So you got first 50,000 across the line. Mm-hmm. Where to from there?
Well, in our heads, multiples of 50 now.
Yep.
50,000 is the new normal, and so 50 will become 150 will become, and so our Excel spreadsheets looked amazing. What we didn't plan for was the 50,000 went out. There was a labeling issue that led to a product recall, and so our launch was a false start. And then once we eventually got product back and got it back to market, it's a year later. We're still only moving maybe 10,000 units a month. So it's like, this is...
How are you making money to live at this stage?
Well, we're not. And that's the other side of the coin. So first year, we were all volunteer. But it was only going to be 1 year. That became second year and third year. So first 3 years, there's a lot of sweat equity kind of going in. We did everything. Justine was a nanny. She'd work early mornings and at night so that she had the day to work on Thankyou. Jarrod and I did traffic control on night shift and stuff. So we kind of made our money through random jobs at call centers, and then we put out our time. So
heaps of grind went into it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 50,000. So you're now working in increments of 50,000. You're going to take over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. This thing's gone global.
Where was your next 50,000 coming from?
Yeah. A very, very, very long time later, because those first 3 years were dark. I mean, it was like a false sense of hope, actually, that first order. I'm glad we got it.
Did you want to give up?
Yeah.
At any stage, did you want to give up?
Many times, because there was the recall, but then when we got back to market, it just was hard and it was slow, and it's like we'd lost the momentum.
Then we need more money.
We were able to bootstrap pretty much everything at that point, but we didn't have salaries, so that was and we had a tiny little office that someone gave us, and it was very hacked together in those early days. But what we found over 3 years was we faced a problem that every leader and entrepreneur faces with an idea, which is how do you get people to buy into it at scale? We could get some cool cafes and outlets to stock it. In fact, I was walking a couple of days ago past one of our early stockists, Ralph, in at Federation Square. The cafe's gone now, but he was in. Heart and soul. I mean, the money we made from that wasn't enough but we had these people that were in, and it was so frustrating because it's like, why can't we get that at a bigger level? And we would go meet with every retailer in this country for 3 years, and it was hard.
But ultimately, you managed to do it. After your first 50,000, your next, because at some point your brilliance in marketing came into it, and whether that was whether that was a built-in stroke of genius or whether you fluked it, but ultimately, like, it paid off big time, didn't it?
It did.
So you had a meeting coming up.
Yeah.
With.
So this is okay. So year 3.
Yeah.
We've now checked every retailer in the country, and we've got a no from everyone, or in some cases 5 no's.
Yeah.
So we can't get into big business. We'd had 2 retailers look at the idea, essentially copy it, launch it themselves without us.
I've heard that.
Yeah, shocker.
Pretty uncool.
Yeah, it was a bit uncomfortable. We had all those sort of issues. Other distributors went bankrupt. Like, it was just like it was a rough patch, and so we were at the end of the road, and it was like, we should stop. This is not generating much profit. $7,000 year 1, 7.5 year 2, 20 year 3. And profit, there's no salaries. So we're giving a little bit of money away. At year 3, we launch a video on YouTube. We say, hey everyone, 2 weeks from today, we're presenting to 7-Eleven Australia. We're taking the water and we want to take you with us. Upload a video or a post onto their Facebook wall to say that if they stock Thankyou water, that you would buy it. And so this was our idea around every retailer says, how do we know it will sell? And we're like, because it will. Put it on the shelf and then you'll know, but it's a risk. And the way brands solve that risk is they put a huge amount of money into marketing. 6 million, 7, 10, huge money. We didn't have the money. And so that was the 3-year kind of hurdle. And we launched the campaign, which was essentially a petition. And it's getting those consumers to pull forward and pull this out of the retailer, and it worked. People sung, danced, rapped, uploaded their posts.
I've seen it. Yeah. Very, very cool stuff.
So that was 7-Eleven. It got us in, and it got us. I mean, that we then, within a couple of years, were able to give over $1 million in the next 2 years of profit away to our partners. Water projects, as well as paying salaries and having a proper business. So it was really year 3. 7-Eleven, Australia Post came on board. We're finally up and running.
So this concept, right, I'm going to simplify it. So this concept of, instead of getting the retailer to get a product in their shop and see if it will have consumer pickup, your concept was get the consumer to go to the retail before they even had the product and tell them, if you have it, we'll take it. Stroke of genius. It paid off. $1 million bucks.
It did. And then the next time we played that same concept out was the Coles and Woolworths campaign, and that.
Let's talk about that.
Well, that was the same idea, but now at a whole nother scale. I think we'd learnt a lot in 3 years. We'd learnt we could make product. We'd learnt a lot about the industry, and we learnt the power of people. And so from year 3 to year 5, we applied those learnings, and we developed. There's 14 new products across the food category, personal care, hand wash, body wash. So we developed that product with amazing innovators and amazing manufacturers who liked the water concept, and it had some runs on the board.
Is this after the Coles and Woolworths thing?
No, so this is...
before this, you've got 14 additional products.
Yeah, sorry, let me rephrase the timeline. So year 3, we land 7-Eleven with water. Year 3 to 5, we spend 2 years developing the 14 products.
Okay, yeah.
Then at year 5, we launch a video.
Who had the balls big enough to do that? Was it you? Well, the concept of you hadn't even met with them yet, but you've effectively gone out to the public, and by public, we're talking the greater public. You've gone out to everyone, and you said, Coles and Woolworths, we're coming for you. Whoever gets on board first. He's going to get the most kudos and most cred from the general public. Let's see who puts their hands up first. Both of them could have said no and torched you.
They both could have, and there's a lot of people that thought that would happen in the industry. And in our view, we were like, we just need one of them. We just need one to say yes. And
so the risk was worth it?
Well, it was. People backed it. Consumers backed it. We flew helicopters above the head office, which was a fun day. 30,000 square foot sign. You know, big, dear Coles, dear Woolies, thank you for changing the world, in brackets if you say yes. Those helicopters flew. The public petitioned. Media covered it. And then, to our shock, they both said yes.
Before they said yes, and you're still at that stage of going to do that campaign, flying the helicopters and all that, I mean, had the 7-Eleven experience given you confidence that you would get consumer buy-in?
Yeah, it did. It did. But the closer we got to launch was like, it was like, what are we doing? And all of our manufacturers had been developing the product, and they kept saying, when's your meeting? I'm like, we've got it in this date in July. And they're like, is it the first meeting? Well, yeah, it's the first meeting. They're like, it's going to be like 2 years, maybe a year best case, after the first meeting before you'll get a commitment. And we were like, we've got a bit of a different strategy, and we think it could be pretty quick after the first meeting. So we were trying to get things ready to shorten that timeline if our idea worked. The closer we got to launch, it was hair-raising. I called each of the manufacturers the night before we hit go on the campaign. I said, tomorrow morning, this is what's going to happen. We haven't told you this bit because each of those manufacturers made product for all the major retailers in this country. And if they got the phone call saying, did you know, we wanted them to be in the clear. They never knew this bit. This is our job at Thankyou. We're here to do the marketing. And so that was an interesting phone call the night before the campaign. There was mixed views on what the next few weeks would hold, and they were some of the scariest and also most thrilling weeks of our journey.
Was there a chance that, like, if you got one of these guys on board, because like you said before, I mean, at this stage you'd made $1 million or more, but I mean, you hadn't made huge money. You were selling a decent amount of product, but was there a concern that if one of them said yes and said yes quickly, that you would implode through demand, or did you have the ability to be able to supply?
I mean, this is the beauty of youthful optimism. We were pretty young, and we just thought anything was possible. So I think that covered a lot of us. And then the second part to it is each of the manufacturers we chose them based on assuming this idea works and they've got the volume. So they had already produced for major brands and major retailers. We started big because we believed that we'd need it to be big. So the whole idea was built on it working, kind of plan A. Plan B, there wasn't if they said no, those manufacturers were too big to run. They couldn't run a little bit of product for us to go sell at a corner store. So we'd got all in on red.
Because with a lot of manufacturers, I mean, having gone to pitch to Coles and Woolworths, had they have said no, that would kill a lot of people. But if they said yes, that would kill a lot of people as well.
Yeah. And it nearly killed us. Like I remember a meeting with Jarrod. Him and I were at one of them, Coles, and we were there with their supply chain and procurement team. And there's like about 10 of them around the table. And they were outlining the complexity. They were like, this is complex. You've got multiple DCs, multiple SKUs. You better make sure your entire supply chain team, are across this. And we were just nodding.
Yeah.
We didn't have the heart to tell them Jarrod is the supply chain team. He's also finance. So he's everything. So very quickly we went from a team of like 5 or 6 of us to having to double and some straight away and then beyond. So the growth did nearly kill us. It was a hard first year.
So you've gone to meet with them. The helicopters are in the air. They say yes. What happens next?
Well, we didn't anticipate the speed. So 5 hours after the meeting at Coles, they said yes. 3 hours after Woolworths, they said yes. And they both wanted product within a month. They wanted to capitalize on the momentum. And then IGAs also came forward saying we want it in a month as well. And it was wild because even our optimism, we thought minimum 6 months. Like maybe 3, but a month. But everyone was pumped. We'd built a huge expectation. And so, yeah, the next month was pretty challenging, but we got there.
Was it at this time both philanthropically and corporately, that you knew that you'd made it, that this was
it was a cool moment, but like it's a good story now, but the day they both said yes was a happy day, but it was a humbling day, because it was like, wow, we've got all these Australian consumers, we've got the #1 morning show, all these people have like backed it, the retailers have said yes, and now our little motley crew, we've got to deliver it.
Back on you to deliver.
We've got to figure it, like what have we done? You know, like on paper it works, but you know, so I don't think at that point. And then once product was in market, well, that enters the new normal, which is huge competition, huge challenges. And so I think for us, there's always that, like, yeah, we'll celebrate the win, but we'll stay pretty quiet, pretty humble, because we're also, this thing is live. The bigger it gets, the riskier it gets.
Yeah. Was there competition? Like, by that I mean,
yeah,
because you had a very different product.
We did.
Like, there's some people that, you know, might buy water because of the brand or the brand association or whatever. But I mean, you've got consumer buying for a very different reason. You could have called it Thankyou. You could have called it something else.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people have bought in because of the concept that the profit's going to charity. Was there competition?
It's a good question. So there is competition, maybe not to the idea of Thankyou, but we as consumers we're fascinating. We say that we make decisions on the products that we buy, and the research shows 69% of consumers say that they buy a product based on sustainability or, you know, cause or, you know, ethics. But the post research data, so post-sale research, shows that it's actually only 9% of consumers that actually made the call based on that.
Okay.
So there's in all of us is like, yeah, we do it because it's the right thing to do, but there's a whole bunch of other reasons that drive. So price, value, at the end of the day, these things matter in a huge way, and certainly as Thankyou has grown, there's more and more, you know, competition in cause or brands that wrap cause around their for-profit business. And so I think at a consumer level, sometimes it's hard to, you know, to know what's what and who's all in or part in or not in, who's greenwashing, who's cause washing. So it's got pretty loud out there.
Yeah, mate, I could talk to you all day, and I know I don't have you all day, and I want to talk to you ultimately about the money that's made and where it goes. But before we do that, can you just give us a bit of a picture now? I mean, we grabbed for the bottle of water before, and you said Thankyou's not doing water anymore, but that is very much where you started. You're not doing it now. What are you doing? How are you making money?
So at year 5, we launched into personal care and food, as well as water, and then they took off. Personal care in particular absolutely blew up. We had the #1 hand wash for 5 years, some of the highest loyalty in the category. Today, the business, we've exited water. You know, from a sustainability perspective, it's not the brand we want to be. We may be coming back in. We are coming back into water in a different way. So that's a little plug for the future. And it won't, it's a more sustainable play.
Can we explore that plug a little?
Well, the cool news is I think by the time this comes out, it'll be in market unless something bad happened. And hopefully it doesn't. But we love this word reimagine. It marks our last 4 years at Thankyou. We've reimagined, actually on the inside, we've reimagined Thankyou. We've reimagined team. So the way we built Thankyou was a in-house model. We had 60 on staff, going on 90 for Australia, and then in our heads, we'll go to America, then that'd be 200, and then 300 for Europe, and 500. And so we'd built this sort of idea of this is how we're going to grow Thankyou. Going to New Zealand humbled us, and it showed us this is not working, with some real challenges. And we've gone on an interesting journey from a team perspective. We've gone from 60 down to 20, which is amazing. It's sort of going backwards, but at the same time, we've partnered with a network of highly integrated partners who specialize in supply chain, who specialize in innovation, in a whole bunch of different areas, and we've brought them in sales, in distribution. And this model, I think, is actually post-pandemic. We all need to work together a lot more. We've reimagined what could it look like for Thankyou to go global. through partners, and we've found and reached out to some of the most amazing companies around the world. I'm about to go speak to one this afternoon. We're onboarding their team who run global e-com businesses, and they run direct-to-consumer businesses for some of the biggest brands in the world. I mean, I just assumed the brands ran it themselves, but no. This particular company have specialized and learnt the art of direct-to-consumer businesses, and they partner with brands. And so in the old world at Thankyou, it's like, no, we'll do that ourselves. But the new world at Thankyou is like, well, actually, we'll go all in on the stuff that we're really good at, and we'll plug in partners to help do that bit. And we went into it thinking we'll make less. Now we're looking back and it's like, we end up making more as a percentage. This is wild. It's more efficient. And what that's allowed us to do is rapidly expand innovation. So we've reimagined how we build and how we think about growth. And that's allowed us to reimagine product. So you'll see in market personal care, our core business has been reimagined. We've launched an incredible range of bottles for good. It's a bottle you buy once. It is a statement piece. It is an art piece, really, but it's for your bathroom or for your kitchen. And then it's supported by our 1, 3 or 5 litre refill system, which you buy and then you refill. It's more responsible as a consumer from a sustainability perspective. It saves you money, but the bottle looks, in our view, pretty remarkable. But we've gone from personal care and reimagined the entire cleaning category. And so for the first time in Australia's history, if not other countries too, we are bringing to market a 100% natural hospital-grade cleaner. That combination hasn't existed before. If you want a hospital-grade cleaner, something that can kill germs at home, you have to enter a huge amount of chemicals into your home. But now, natural cleaner, 100% natural, so no chemical risk into your home to remove a risk. We're pretty excited about it. I mean, the category is bigger than personal care. This is a very disruptive idea. We're pretty excited about that. We're heading into the natural deodorant space with a kind of a unicorn in deodorant. It's a 100% natural deodorant that's 48-hour antiperspirant. That hasn't happened until now. How is that possible? Gilles, he's a Frenchman, an innovator in Europe. We're looking at his team taking Thankyou into Europe. He describes this deodorant as his life's best innovation. And he's done some amazing work. But under our new partner model, we're calling out to innovators, and we have been, behind the scenes for some time. And now people are going, well, hey, I could bring this to the table. I could bring that. And so what you're about to see is product reimagined in these categories that I think is the market-leading product from an efficacy perspective, delivered at great value and for all of us as consumers. And so you'll see personal care, cleaning, deodorant. There's a few more coming, but that's later in the year. And then through a great network of partners, our next few years is rolling out the new Thankyou into more and more markets to take that number from 18 million well beyond it.
Mate, super cool. Very cool branding and marketing ideas, but really cool products too. So hopefully that takes off for you, which I know it will. Everything you do touch it turns to gold these days. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And is your product only in Australia, or have you managed to get it overseas?
So Australia, a little bit of a footprint in New Zealand, and then watch this space, because everything that launches here in Australia is built for the world, world class in its design, in its we've thought about what does it look like for Thankyou to play on the world stage and not just play the game, but maybe win the spaces we want to win in. So the next few years are pretty ambitious.
So you got some exciting things.
We do.
You've still got that vision. You've still got that hunger for growth. And
I was saying to our team, even coming into this year, I've never felt more excited about Thankyou. We're 14 years in, and it's not just a hype. It's like I also haven't felt this sense of peace and excitement. And the peace comes from, we've walked a long journey. We've learnt a lot of things. We've learnt a lot of hard lessons. We've had a couple of really tough years. But we're on that edge of a new normal. And there's a great excitement because 17 million, we've just tipped over 18, and it's about to,
Okay, so while I've got you, what I want to learn about is you've made 18 million bucks. Where's it gone and who's it helped?
Okay, so our focus at Thankyou is the end of extreme poverty. And that was sort of from day one. To define that, we're talking about people living on less than $2.15 US a day. So it's a very small amount of money. Right now, there's 715 million people living in that space, predominantly found throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, a little bit in the Pacific, is where this type of poverty exists. At Thankyou, we've also worked in Australia and supported projects for Indigenous communities here in Australia. We've done a little bit of local work in New Zealand. But our main focus is about connecting us as consumers with the most extreme level of poverty that there is in the world. And it is a view of global citizenship more than, look, I'll just help who's in front of me. We love that idea too, but we think that's something we should all do here at home, here with our own lives. Many people support great local charities. Often extreme poverty falls to the bottom or the lower end of the list, and this is where you'll find Thankyou helping connect you with that mission and that injustice. Because if you are living in extreme poverty, you don't know where your water's coming from, and it's certainly not clean. You don't have food security. You're battling with education, either no education or poor education. Your safety is a concern. We have 40 million people right now in slavery, right? And that's bad. That's worse than it was back in the days of William Wilberforce. And it's like we've got these issues that are so extreme, and it's so wrong. But also there is hope, because there are people and organizations who've got real solutions to solve these issues. They just need more funding. And so Thankyou, our job is to fund them.
Yeah, so I was about to say that. I mean, you've got a huge brand and you're making huge money, but you don't necessarily have a huge team behind you. I mean, you're trying to keep your overheads as lean as you can, I would imagine, so that maximum dollar goes to your not-for-profit. I would imagine, spend most of your time you're innovative with your brand. You're always pushing boundaries. You would be super busy. You're out talking as well. You're pushing your not-for-profits agenda. So I would imagine, yeah, sure, you're making big money, but you'd be pretty time poor, wouldn't you? How are you getting the money to the coalface of the problems? Is it
so we have huge credit. So Justine and myself are trustees of our charitable trust that owns the business, Thankyou Group, and that does all of the giving. Pete Yao is also a trustee. He's our head of impact. Him, and he has support in our team, have really